there. I I want to move on towards another Pelicans who's seen a great deal of success this preseason. Someone that people have high expectations for going into the season, and he had a great close to the season last year. Trey Murphy, the third, has been on fire, absolutely on fire to start this preseason. And Mason, tell me why this person should not close games. I'm on like start Trey Murphy mode, but we're not gonna go there.
If we go there, I'm gonna ask you who you're benching, but
no question, no question, and that's a different conversation. we'll get into there.
I think I have to find a different shirt.
I mean,
that's what you're.
I love Herbert Jones, but let's talk about closing games first.
Yeah. So the argument is that you have enough offense without Trey Murphy there. And if depends on who you're pulling. If you're pulling out Herb in the closing five, I have concerns. If you're pulling out Jonas, depending on the matchup, I think it's certainly a plausible option if he proves that he can be at least a neutral defender, which I think, he's still young, and that's still that is unless you're Herb Jones, that's an area where your typical rookies aren't good. Second-year players are still a huge learning curve. They had to defend the NBA. Is there another player you'd consider pulling out of the finishing five besides either of those two guys?
Yeah, I mean, I said I would bench her for the starting lineup. I will not bench him for the closing lineup. I think that he has to be in every closing lineup as long as he's healthy moving forward. And I feel the exact same way about Trey. I think those two, for me, are non-negotiable, and there's obviously two other non-negotiables in Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. So you've already touched on Jonas. The other guy, the other odd person out is CJ. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to ask yourself, are CJ's, there will be games where CJ's skill set is absolutely necessary, right? The ability to create off the bounce, the ability to just catch and shoot. There are going to be games where he's more of a liability on defense, and he's a redundancy on offense, meaning that if you trot out a 5-wing lineup, or you're placing Trey Murphy there, you're going to get a similar amount of floor spacing. And ultimately, if you have the ball in Zion Williamson or Brandon Ingram's hands, then you need less of his offense, of CJ McCollum's individual offense, more of his ability to space the floor. And you're already replicating that with Trey Murphy out there, while putting a much, much better defender, a much better event generator. We've already seen his ability to generate blocks both on the ball and on the weak side, a much better rebounder. So I ask you this: can you conceive of a closing lineup for Golden State that did not involve Klay Thompson?
No.
Right? It makes no sense. Okay, right? Yeah. It makes no sense to have a 6'8" elite three-point shooter who also plays defense to not close games. Okay. Can you conceive of a Denver Nuggets closing lineup that doesn't involve Michael Porter Jr.?
That one's less clear to me, but probably not.
Probably not. But you look at their bench, it's definitely that, not, right?
Yeah, that's why. Although their bench to get better this year. Their team is deeper than it was last year.
DeAndre Jordan?
But no. Look, Michael Porter Jr. is closing games.
Right. He's 6'10", 6'11", and one of the best shooters in the league, right? So you look across the league, and the elite shooters that don't close games are the ones that don't play defense, right? It's your formerly JJ Reddick's, it's your Duncan Robinsons, it's your potentially Joe Harris, but Joe Harris is a much better defender than Duncan Robinson, and I anticipate he's going to close a lot of games for Brooklyn. When Danny Green was in his prime, would any team close games without Danny Green? No. Right? So you have this one player who has one of the most valuable skill sets in the whole league, a skill set that every team searches for, a skill set that elevates the game of every single star, right? When you have that level of shooting, and what Trey's displayed to me this preseason is that he's not a standstill shooter. He is a movement shooter, right? He's coming off a screen. So it's baseline out of bounds plays. He had one against the Spurs. He had one against the Heat, where they're basically they have the someone inbounding in the center setting a screen for Trey, while someone else and Trey is setting a screen for someone else who's cutting towards the basket. And it's a series of screens that basically is either going to generate a free layup for someone who's cutting to the basket because they're going to get confused about the shooter, or it's going to generate a free shot for Trey. And his ability to shoot on the move, his ability to shoot from 35 feet out. That's what he's doing right now. He's playing with that level of confidence.
Yep.
And when you have Zion Williamson and his rim pressure on the floor, first of all, we have a pretty large sample of minutes where putting the ball in his hands generates the league's best offense. Right? We have a pretty large sample of those minutes with Point Zion. And that was with Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe. That was with Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe, and not with a shooter of Trey's caliber. Now you're telling me you have someone who is willing to wait for the ball. We talked about his movement shooting, but when he's spotting up, he's not spotting up at the 3-point line. He's spotting up 4, 5, 6 feet behind the 3-point line. You know what kind of closeout that generates? You know, like if someone has to help off Trey, like how much distance they have to cover to do that. So I just think of everything he provides you on the basketball court. And I think it's absolutely overthinking it from a basketball perspective if you don't close games with him. And it goes into, hey, I like my vets. And so I would rather close with Larry Nance, or I would rather close with Jonas Valanciunas, or I would rather close with CJ McCollum because Trey hasn't earned that equity. But from a basketball standpoint, to me, it's bonkers.
3 things I think about before making that the norm. First is Zion, Point Zion. We have to be refs tighten up at late in games in crunch time situations. Zion, you've already made the point. Zion gets fouled a lot. Point Zion becomes less effective if the refs start swallowing the whistle late in games. And so if you have CJ off the floor, your creation goes down. So it's BI and then it's Zion. And so I just, the offense, if the Zion is not officiated fairly, there are certain risks to how much creation the Pelicans have on the floor at that point. That's one. So it's not a Pelicans issue. Is it going to be officiated fairly issue? Second is Trey Murphy's defense. I'm with you. I think the defensive talent is there. The length is obviously there. He's making plays. He's made plays in summer league in the preseason. He's still young. That's going to come. I don't think he's going to be a plus defender, right. With regular.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
really? Really?
I'm not there yet.
Wow.
It
I
takes.
think he's going to be great.
I don't think he's going to be bad.
I think he's going to be a top 3 defender on the
He'll be better than
Pelicans.
CJ.
It's going to be top four. So I think it's going to be Herb. I think it's going to be Jose. I think it's going to be Dyson. And then I think it's going to be Trey. I think he's a better defender than Larry Nance.
Interesting.
In what he's going to give you.
I just think there's more of a learning curve, and Herb Jones is immediately a plus defender and like that. And he was I know he played 3 years for his college. I don't remember, but
hold on. Like Trey was a plus defender already. Hold on. keep talking. I'm looking this up.
Okay. So those are 2 of the things. The third is, I don't remember what I was going to say. I had these 3 things and there was a third one. I'll come back.
So youth, defense, creation.
I don't remember what the third one was. Oh, well, it'll come to me.
So here's my pushback to you. If you need more creation, keep Trey on there. Put CJ on there. So you have a guard out there. All right. So you have CJ, you have BI, you have Zion. Those are your creators. You have Herb as your catch-all defender, and Trey Murphy as your X factor. You're someone who you already have the gravitational force of Zion, who has just the density of like a neutron star just going at the rim, right?
Yeah.
Why would you not have the equivalent gravitational pull on the other end of the court with Trey Murphy? And all of a sudden, when teams are forced to pick their poison, and you have 3 off the bounce creators, what are they supposed to do with those situations?
Yeah, so that was my third one, and it's very much third in terms of my concerns. It's probably not enough to go away from what you're thinking, but do you think Trey Murphy has that gravitational pull from the start? What does it take? Because we know that 3-point efficacy the attention that defenses give to some of those players, it lags. And so you've got to really prove it before defenses are really willing to just actually have to make a conscious choice to go out. And maybe they still won't, but your response can be, all right, then Trey's just going to make it rain from 3-point range, right?
Exactly. So why do I care if they don't guard him? They want to give him an open three. That's a problem for me.
Yeah. So whereas I think CJ is immediate, defenses care about that. And so it is certainly going to be a pick your poison. And so again, I'm not saying that it's the wrong decision. I'm just saying that I see certain risks in the outset, and I think CJ's the easier choice. But I certainly see a world in which Trey Murphy, if he is a plus defender and really doesn't give up much on that end, if the difference between CJ and Trey Murphy's defense is wider than the creation advantage that CJ McCollum gives you, then to me, yeah, I think that's certainly a move you can make. I wouldn't do it all the time. I worry about. CJ seems like a real team first guy, but I worry about him consistently not playing in closing minutes. Like I don't necessarily want that all the time, but I get where you're coming from.
So to bring this conversation in more of a real space in terms of what's actually going to happen, we are probably a year away from any CJ doesn't close games conversations, at least a year away. He just signed his extension. He had a good year. He has enough cachet. And again, veteranosity to where I just don't think it is a conversation. It is a word that is just shout out Seth Partnow. We are using this because of my frustrations with Garrett Temple and coaches routinely playing vets when they're not supposed to be playing. But I think we're at least a year away from any real you can't play CJ in those minutes conversations. At least a year. So what's been the buzz around the team and what is the general understanding at this moment is it's Larry Nance that will close games at the 5.
Huh.
And my whole thing is the advantage of closing with Larry at the 5 is he gives you some perimeter shooting, not a high volume, not high percentage.
He's shown decent shooting when he's been healthy and playing enough, right?
Yeah.
And so, but no one's going to run out and guard him, to your point.
Right. Your point about gravity there, yeah, absolutely. No one's going to pay attention to him out there, right? He has some playmaking. He has some level of interior finishing in terms of being a lob threat or just getting him into the short roll and pick and roll situations.
He's decent at everything. He's not great at anything.
Exactly, right? Maybe this was him coming off of still recovering from that injury, but in the playoffs, whenever they closed with him at the 5, Chris Paul cooked him.
Yeah.
Cooked him. Absolutely cooked him. And do I think that he's probably going to look better on defense this year than he did at that time? I'd hope so. I'm optimistic about it. But when I look at the strengths that the Pelicans have, you are opting to take Jonas off the floor for supposedly better defense, right? If you're in a situation where the guard's going to cook you regardless, then that defense is not better. Right. But what you have taken off the floor is absolutely elite rebounding ability on both ends, elite finishing ability, and just the more offense, right? So you've taken that off the court. If that is my trade-off, then what I want is something else that's elite, which is shooting from Trey Murphy. Do I think Trey Murphy can get to the level of Larry Nance defensively this year? Yes. Do I think he can surpass it? Yes. What the coaching staff probably needs to see to put Trey in those minutes is not necessarily a Trey thing, in my opinion. It's a Zion thing. And I think they have to see enough defensive buy-in, enough rebounding ability, enough of ability to change and alter things from the weak side to where they feel confident playing him at the quote-unquote 5. Hit the mic. Where they feel confident playing him at the 5. So it's not that, hey, we're playing Larry at the 5, so you don't have to. It's, okay, we trust you to do this, and we can take our ceiling to a higher level by playing Trey. Yeah. But I love Larry Nance. I think he's going to be a huge piece. I think he's going to have big games. I just think that the Pelicans have 2 players in Jonas and Trey Murphy who give you elite things. and in a way that other teams have to adjust to. Other teams have to. No one has to game plan for Larry Nance. No one on either end. No
the
one.
Suns had to adjust for Jonas in that series.
Yeah, and then the Pelicans readjusted by matching his minutes to JaVale McGee's, and then they still continued to win those minutes. But no one has to adjust to Larry Nance. So if no one has to adjust to him, like what am I really getting out of that? And is the advantage of being more mobile actually coming through when guards are isolating him and playing him in space?
Yeah, I do agree that I would play with given the choice to close games between Larry Nance and Trey Murphy. I would pick Trey Murphy. The one thing I'll say in Larry Nance's credit is that not every team is going to have a guy like Chris Paul who's going to dissect you. Obviously, great wing scorers. He's not going to be able to defend those guys anyway. The degree to which Chris Paul is a wizard and can do stuff like that. Not every team has a guy like that, but it's not like a huge vote of confidence for Larry Nance either.
Yeah, I mean, but you look around the league, there's dynamic guards on every team though. So it's really about, generating that switch and making him defend in space. And is that something you want Larry Nance doing? I trust Trey in isolation situations more than I trust Larry Nance. I think he's more mobile. I think he has more, maybe not more athleticism, an equal amount of athleticism. I think he is taller and longer. He affects shots more, and you keep giving him those opportunities, you're only going to raise the ceiling of the team. And do I think Larry Nance is going to be an amazing spot starter when Zion goes down? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a great point in that even if overall you think that Larry Nance gives you slightly more in a closing lineup than Trey Murphy, I think it benefits this team in the long run more to give Murphy those minutes. And I'm not saying put a worse team out there intentionally, but if the difference is so nominal, then you want to give Trey those reps. But I think you mentioned what the coaching staff has to see, and I feel like there's probably more they want to see just for the first 42 minutes of the game, right? Because they didn't give him those chances last year until late in the season, at which I think everyone was screaming from the rooftops, play Trey Murphy over Garrett Temple. But the fact of the matter is it did not happen. And so they probably want to see more in regular season from Trey. Not fair to Trey, but it is what it is, before they start saying, okay, let's give you those closing.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, veteranocity is a disease in this league, and the vets are going to get the benefit of the doubt, even though what have they done to actually earn that benefit of the doubt when they routinely mess up on the court? Cough, 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 Garrett Temple.
Eric Bledsoe even.
Eric Bledsoe. Like, what have they actually done to earn that? And they're in the right to fail routinely. I just think that's an outdated mode of thinking, and these young players deserve more credit.